Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, November 6th, 2025. Max Blumenthal joins us now. I have a lot to talk to you about. Before we get to Prime Minister Netanyahu defending prison rape, and before we get to the acquittal of the sandwich guy, and before we get to the
I can't wait.
right before we get to the Heritage Foundation ripping itself apart over their Zionist donors, what do you think is going to happen if and when the U.S. attacks or invades Venezuela?
Well, the New York Times published probably based on military sources, a possible plan for the invasion. This follows a Miami Herald report citing pretty high level sources, possibly Pentagon sources, possibly Marco Rubio himself, which mapped out kind of a three-stage plan. First, to attack military installations. A second plan that focuses on sending in special forces to destroy Venezuelan airfields. And then another plan, which is audacious to say the least, certainly criminal, to send special forces into Caracas to capture or kill Nicolas Maduro, who's said to be the leader of a narco terror cartel called Cartel of the Suns, which was actually created in the early 1990s by the Central Intelligence Agency, and which no longer exists. So they've put out all these plans, and I don't know if they're workable. I asked one person about these plans, who you might call a military expert. He's a former U.S. Green Beret special forces operator who actually led a mercenary invasion of Venezuela, which completely failed. And he said that there's no way for a popular rebellion to take place now. There's no real popular support for such a thing, and that only an invasion is possible, and that an invasion is a crazy idea. So it looks like they're planning something deeply disastrous based on the neoconservative delusion that Nicolas Maduro will immediately fall and that he's this deeply unpopular dictator. But let's look at all of the other operations they've planned in the past, going back to the failed coup of 2002. Every one of them has failed for one reason. The military is solidly with Maduro, the military leadership, the military rank and file, and he has a large constituency among Venezuelans who support him.
Does anybody take seriously the narco-terrorist nonsense? Anybody in the U.S.? I mean, some people do, but commentators, American military people, American intel, who could take this seriously?
Well, the people who take this seriously are administration DUI hire Pete Hegseth and his former colleagues at Fox News, and that's about it. I mean, this is just laughable.
And when American boys are killed in this, there's 10,000 Marines out there. When some of them don't return home alive.
Well, if they send special forces into Caracas, I think there's going to be casualties, and then they would use those casualties to escalate and destroy sections of cities, as was done in Panama City during the 1989-1990 U.S. assault on Panama on a similarly shabby basis to capture President Manuel Noriega because he was getting a little too big for his britches. The U.S. military destroyed an entire neighborhood in Panama City called El Chorrillo, which was home to a mostly Afro-Panamanian population. And then they were forced into de facto concentration camps behind razor wire because they had nowhere else to go. And after the U.S. left, the most unpopular government in Panamanian history came to power and turned Panama into a money laundering hub. Venezuela would be a hub for actual narco cartels, not the phony ones that the CIA created in the 1990s to actually ship drugs into the United States. This is something every American should know about this. 60 Minutes covered this case of the CIA creating a fake narco cartel using their assets in the Venezuelan National Guard before Chavez was president to ship drugs, 20 tons of cocaine into the United States in order to provide the DEA with intelligence about drug shipping routes and who the major drug dealers in U.S. cities were. And you can assume that that 20 tons of cocaine went straight up American noses. So this is now the cartel that Nicolas Maduro is supposed to be in charge of, but very little cocaine is even coming out of Venezuela. It's mostly coming through the West Coast. It's not the problem in the United States, by the way. The problem is fentanyl. Fentanyl is coming across the U.S.-Mexico border. Opioids have killed millions of Americans. Donald Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was also the lawyer for Purdue Pharma, the pharmaceutical company run by the Sackler family that was personally responsible for killing millions of Americans, especially in the Rust Belt, Trump country. So, I mean, the hypocrisy is just off the charts. Unfortunately, U.S. media won't say what we've been saying, which is been well documented back when 60 Minutes had Mike Wallace on the team and they reported on the CIA and not on behalf of the CIA.
Right. Switching gears, how do you account for the rise and electoral success of Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani here in New York City?
Well, it's said that the major issue is affordability. And of course it is. New York's the least affordable city on the Acela corridor of all these cities are unaffordable. Just young people who come out of college or even grad school, they've got loans. They can't afford to live anywhere. And then, working class New Yorkers feel the same way. Mamdani is being attacked by a really fanatical right-wing chorus. In part, they're claiming that the working class rejected him and that he was only supported by members of the professional managerial class who are gentrifiers, who have blue hair and tattoos and are downwardly mobile. He won the Bronx. I think he lost the Bronx in the Democratic primary to Cuomo. He won the Bronx this time. He won a majority of Black voters. He won a majority of Latino voters, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans in New York. And he got clobbered in Staten Island, which is like the Republican borough. So he's won the working class because New York is not affordable. But there's another issue here that was sort of forced on him because the media and his opponents thought it would be a liability. In the first major debate, when Zoran Mamdani was not the front runner, he was asked, what will his first trip be? And I mean, Chris can pull this footage up. It was an incredible exchange. Everybody said, my first trip will be to the Holy Land. I'm going to go to Israel. And then he said, I'm going to stay here in New York. And then the moderators started to set in on him. They thought, this guy's crazy, radical, Muslim. You're not going to go to Israel? And he said, no, I'm going to meet with Jews in their communities right here. And then they asked him, do you recognize Israel as a Jewish state? And he said, I recognize Israel. And they said, but not as a Jewish state. And he said, no, there should be equal rights. Well, that's what we believe about our own country. There should be equal rights. It shouldn't be a white Christian nation enshrined in the Constitution. It shouldn't be a Jewish nation. So he benefited from that exchange. That is when he started to surge in the polls. And it's because most New Yorkers, like most Americans, but especially most New Yorkers, are sick and tired of Netanyahu, and they're sick of Israel's genocide machine, and they're sick of the media enforcing conformity on this issue. So one Democratic politician finally stands up against it, and he's benefiting. There's another guy in Maine, Graham Plattner, U.S. military veteran, kind of running as a Bernie Democrat. He has said that he will sanction Israel, and he is the front runner in the Maine Senate race to take over the seat from Susan Collins. So Democrats are benefiting from this issue, and Chuck Schumer is freaking out right now and has refused to even say who he voted for in the New York mayoral race. In addition to the whole green room at Fox News having a meltdown, all of the Likud lobby, they don't know what to do because they've been rejected by the American public in the city with the largest population of Jews outside of Tel Aviv.
Right. Here's a fascinating interview, a little clip of it, of Charlie Kirk by Tucker Carlson. I had not seen this until today. I don't know if you've seen it. Remarkably articulate and prescient about Mamdani. Chris, number 13.
The rise of Mamdani should be it's a coming attraction of what is coming next.
Who's Mamdani?
Zoran Mamdani, the Muslim communist that is running for mayor in New York City. Not everyone, but most people are missing the point of really what this is. This is yet another distress signal by young people to say, hey, if you're not going to fix our life economically, we're going to get very radical politically. Now, let's take a step back. President Trump won the youth vote in many states across the country, in many battleground states. One of the reasons he was able to win younger voters and younger men, especially in big numbers, is that they were trying to get their leaders' attention. They said, hey, this guy, Donald Trump, he is pledging to go fix our economic anxiety. He is loud. He is going to get your attention. Donald Trump was a distress signal by a lot of young people, especially young men, that were stuck in a credit-centric renter economy. And again, this is what is the rise of Mamdani. It's just another iteration of this, only from the left.
Yeah,
Pretty interesting.
I mean, yeah, Charlie Kirk was sharpening that message toward the end of his life.
Yeah.
Nothing was being advanced to TPUSA to follow on his words. I mean, he and his team were opposed to student loan forgiveness, and so we're supporting all of the oligarchic policies of Donald Trump. But he's right in his analysis. And Donald Trump was promising to make life more affordable. It's one of the reasons why he won a margin of the Black and Latino vote and won some former Democrats and cut into Kamala Harris's base, was because of the inflation crisis under Joe Biden and the affordability crisis in general, and the neoliberal policies of the Democrats going back to Bill Clinton, if not Jimmy Carter. They weren't that different from the Reagan Republicans. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Max.
Well, just one more point. After Mamdani's win, Trump actually issued a statement on Truth Social calling for more affordability. So he even recognizes the problem. The issue is Donald Trump has failed to fix the problem. He's made it worse. And Mike Johnson today was asked about grocery prices surging, and he said, well, that's just normal with inflation. Grocery prices always go up. So they have no agenda.
They have no agenda. They don't know what they're doing. Donald Trump effectively elected Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey by shutting down the brand new tunnel, which is 15% already dug, approved by Congress, approved by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, approved by New Jersey, approved by New York, approved by the Department of Transportation. 3,000 jobs just to build this thing. Tremendous economic improvement once it's over. Unanimously looked for by New York and New Jersey. Shut it down like that during the campaign. And the Republican candidate refused to criticize him because he was running as Trump's guy.
Yeah.
There
goes North Jersey.
Yes. Switching gears. How devastating, or is it not devastating at all, is this latest scandal in Israel to Netanyahu, where he defends the prison rape and attacks the now former general who authorized the release of the tape of these creeps that filmed themselves raping this Palestinian prisoner?
Just one quick point on the last issue. Mickey Sherrill, former Navy intelligence, former roommate of Abigail Spanberger, who was just elected governor of Virginia.
I did not know they were roommates. Small world.
Close friends. And Spanberger was CIA and is not authorized to talk about her career, where she spent 10 years in the CIA in Western Europe, probably Brussels and Los Angeles. She's not allowed to talk about it. So Virginia voters were not able to vet the Democratic candidate because she's CIA. This is a big trend in the Democratic Party. There's the CIA Democrats. Elise Slotkin in Michigan is another rising star in the party. And the party center is really pushing them against the Mamdani left. So I think this is an important point 2 days after the elections. On, when we're talking about Israel, it's, we should be talking about the post-genocide ceasefire period. And for Israel, that's what it is. In Gaza, the genocide is kind of continuing in slow motion, and there are still Israeli bombings, horrific Israeli bombings. But Israeli society is experiencing the kind of socio-political crack up that comes after every war. And this was a very unprecedented war. And so we talked about this before. there was a sexual assault scandal where several soldiers from this, I think they were called Unit 101, this shadowy unit of thugs who were maintaining the torture center of Sde Teman in the Negev desert. And they were filmed on CCTV sexually assaulting a Palestinian male who was a civilian, someone who had no connection to Hamas, with an electric wired baton, just brutalizing him on camera. And this leaked because the Israeli army's legal attaché was unable to prosecute them. She was so frustrated. They couldn't be prosecuted because there were national pro-rape riots across Israel, consisting of army reservists who besieged Israeli army bases and staged a kind of January 6th style rebellion, breaking into army bases. They broke into, I think, the military headquarters in Tel Aviv, HaKiryah, and the leadership was so intimidated by this that they let these guys go free. One of them, the key rapist, his name was Meir Shetrit. He actually went on national TV and was appearing on talk shows as a kind of national folk hero and a victim. And so she was so frustrated that she leaked the video. It gets out there, and Netanyahu now has said that this video did enormous PR damage to Israel that they cannot recover from. So he doesn't even deny that it's real. He just says the crime is that the world found out about what we were doing in our torture dungeons, and that we have this rape culture in our army. And so the Israeli legal attaché to the military disappears for several days. A national manhunt ensues. The police are looking for her, and it's suspected that she committed suicide as reservists were planning to besiege her own home and demand that she step down. They find her alive on a beach. I don't know if she had attempted suicide, but she was alive. And now she's facing criminal prosecution, and she herself is likely to go to jail while the rapists are free and national folk heroes. This is Israel. This is our unshakable ally. And you know, you look at the reporting on this. This isn't, when you look at the New York Times report it, they always refer to it as abuse. They never say prison rape. They never say sexual assault, but the New York Times still has a front page story on its website, Screams Without Words, consisting of fabricated allegations against Palestinians on October 7th, accusing them of systematically sexually abusing Israelis on October 7th. And not one of those allegations has been validated by any forensic evidence at all. The story is false is bogus from top to bottom, and they refuse to retract it. So the media is playing along. I mean, this scandal should illustrate just how deeply depraved and sick Israel is as a society, and how corrupt its political system is, that they're protecting people who took Abu Ghraib as a cookbook.
Here's, I'm looking for it, Chris. Here's Netanyahu. Chris, you have it. Here's Netanyahu commenting after you see these thugs in masks on air complaining that they were caught.
The IDF's international legitimacy efforts are greatly benefited by the aura, the protection with which the justice system provides it.
Yesterday, the reservists charged with abuse appeared in public and accused Tomer Yerushalmi of spoiling their case.
You've done a field trial on us in front of the cameras, as if you've already decided who's guilty. We will continue to fight for justice for ourselves, for everyone who came out in uniform and defended our home.
This weekend, Tomer Yerushalmi briefly went missing, and police found her abandoned car with a note. Police later found her on a beach, safe but in distress.
The incident in Sde Teman caused immense damage to the image of the State of Israel and the IDF, to our soldiers. This is perhaps the most severe public relations attack that the State of Israel has experienced since its establishment.
So all he's concerned about is the image of the State of Israel.
It's a public relations attack. That's all he cares about. Indeed. We know they don't care about Palestinian lives or rights. They have no rights. But Netanyahu actually believes that these soldiers were the victims. It's illustrative of the entire Zionist worldview, where for 2 years we've watched them commit genocide, carry out a holocaust of children across the Gaza Strip, deliberately starve people. And now they're playing the victim because people are rejecting their political worldview, rejecting Israel, electing Zoran Mamdani. It's something that Netanyahu chalks up to ancient hatreds that have existed for thousands of years, as if there's no real source in the current reality. And in this case, we have footage, documented footage, like indisputable, that no one denies, not Netanyahu, not even these soldiers, of the rape of an innocent Palestinian male prisoner who is kidnapped from the Gaza Strip. And somehow they're the victims. Somehow we're at fault we're attacking them by talking about it right now. Right now, this is an anti-Semitic attack because we're talking about Israeli soldiers raping someone.
Before we get to the crack up at the Heritage Foundation, Eric and Laura Trump were featured speakers at a TPUSA event in the reddest of red locations in the country, Auburn University in Alabama. Here's what happened. Cut number 8.
I'd like to ask about your father's relationship with Israel. He's taken over $230 million from pro-Israel groups. During the summer against Iran, even though he advised against it, Israel still attacked Iran. Israel has not been a great ally to the U.S. all the way since 1960 when they bombed the USS Liberty. Israel is a nation where Christians are constantly under attack in both Gaza and the West Bank. We talk about America first and defending Christians, but how can we do this if we align ourselves with a nation that does not do that itself?
There's no question my father's had frustration. In fact, I think he's had frustration throughout the whole conflict with both sides. At the same time, make no mistake, you have a nation that will develop a nuclear weapon, and you have a nation that will use that nuclear weapon against the Western way of life. There's no question about it.
In response to the nukes from Iran, Israel has nuclear weapons and is not a part of the IAEA, unlike Iran. And it's just sad to see because I've never seen the American president get treated the way he does by the Israeli government.
This is a president of peace. And sometimes you have to be slightly unconventional with how you get there. You use what you have. That is certainly what he's been able to do. Peace around the world sounds pretty good to me, and that's what this president is bringing.
Could not answer that, young man, at all.
No, and at a previous event featuring Vice President J.D. Vance in Mississippi, he was asked about, similar Israel carrying out ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip. J.D. Vance didn't dispute that Israel was carrying out ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip. And it went even further. The student or young person complained that Jews in general are hostile to Christianity. And J.D. Vance said, well, that's a debate that we can have with Jews. He said, we, as the vice president, he's speaking as a Christian nationalist, saying, well, we need to have that debate with Jews. So it's kind of revealing the responses of these Trump officials, Trump figures, Trump family members is very revealing of a worldview that's just not actually naturally, organically sympathetic and enthusiastic about Israel or about the so-called Judeo-Christian alliance. And it's causing a lot of tension between them and the Zionist billionaire class of Miriam Adelson and Ike Perlmutter, who have been supporting them. These young people, they're the Groypers. The Groypers are on the loose, and the Groypers have a lot of momentum right now.
What's the word you're using, Max?
Well, this is the movement that was spun out by Nick Fuentes, who is the source of the right-wing meltdown at the Heritage Foundation, who is a streamer, podcaster, who's become extremely popular and has been doing kind of a run on all the major right-wing podcasts. And he wound up getting on Tucker Carlson's show after having this public feud with Tucker Carlson in which he denigrated Tucker and his family. And then they made up live on air or not live on air, but during the broadcast. And now it's making waves throughout the right that Tucker has embraced someone who is openly hostile to Jews and believes that Jews are a malign force in the United States, has taken it beyond the issue of just Israel and Zionism and is focused on Jewish influence. Kevin Roberts, the head of the Heritage Foundation, fairly new director, defended Tucker Carlson about that interview, and all hell broke loose. So this is something that dogged Charlie Kirk, that Charlie Kirk was getting these same questions from Groypers everywhere he went throughout 2019. It was known as the Groyper Wars, and it drove him insane. You could see by the end of his life, he was starting to move away from the directions he was receiving from Zionist billionaires. And part of it was because of all the pressure he was getting on the road, and that you can hear the rapturous applause when this young man said, Israel's not the best ally to us. And he brought up the USS Liberty incident. He said 1960, it was 67. You could hear a lot of the crowd is with him.
Yes.
Young conservative grassroots that's kind of where they're going. So this is all building up to a J.D. Vance run for president, and it's causing a gigantic crisis like we've never seen before on the right. This is a bigger crisis and a more consequential civil war than the one that broke out starting in the 80s and early 90s at the National Review over Joe Sobran and Pat Buchanan and their views on Israel.
Here's a young man who works at the Heritage Foundation, very poignantly and eloquently saying, you want me to do what? Chris, cut number 14.
I just want to say I'm grateful for all of our colleagues who are speaking out today. And especially for our colleagues on the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. I'm especially grateful for their work. I also have a question about it, given some of the leaks that occurred yesterday. Right now, the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism is demanding that Heritage host Shabbat dinners with Heritage interns and junior staff. The faith of many Christians here at Heritage, myself included, would prevent us from attending these dinners in good conscience. As you know, for many Christians, Friday is a special day of prayer and abstinence to commemorate the death of Christ. I assume that no staff will be required to attend the Shabbat dinners, but my concern is that these dinners will be to serve as a sort of informal litmus test. And I'm worried that they will hurt many Christians who are not anti-Semitic, but don't feel comfortable attending a Shabbat dinner. I would like to know how you guys would respond to that concern and how we can be sure that the dinners won't be used that way when the people requesting them or someone has already been leaking them to the media.
Shabbat dinners, mandatory attendance at the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah. For those of you watching who aren't, I know a lot of people watch this from abroad and they might not know what the Heritage Foundation is. The Heritage Foundation is the most important think tank in the United States. It's the outsourced brain of the Republican Party. It's just a few blocks away from the U.S. Capitol next to Union Station. They have dorms there where they train young people to become Republican operatives, conservative operatives, and through their intern program. So they literally live there and are trained there. Project 2025 came out of the Heritage Foundation. And more recently, on the heels of Project 2025, which was basically like the plan for the plan for hollowing out the federal government, there was Project Esther. Project Esther is a blueprint for criminalizing the Palestine Solidarity Movement in the United States. And it was published under the watch of the Heritage Foundation's National Anti-Semitism Task Force, which is basically a Zionist cutout, obviously created with Zionist billionaire money inside the Heritage Foundation, which is also kind of simultaneously supportive of a form of Christian nationalism. And so there's this conflict. The task force is headed up by the vice president of the Heritage Foundation, Victoria Coates, and she is at odds with the president, Kevin Roberts. And Roberts sort of represents more like the nationalist faction. As I said, he defended Tucker Carlson after Carlson hosted Nick Fuentes. So the audio you just heard was from an all-staff meeting that was off the record, and it was leaked. The audio was leaked, and then the video was leaked. The video I watched the entire video today, all hour and 45 minutes. It was like a reality show with different staff members fake crying and performing like they were daytime soap opera actors on behalf of the Israel lobby, and they're so outraged. And understandably embarrassed in a way, for some of them. But here's one who's complaining because Victoria Coates, the head of this so-called anti-Semitism task force, which is clearly funded by Israel cutouts, is going to invited all staff members to a Shabbat dinner on Friday. And as he said, it's an informal litmus test. Anyone who doesn't show up to the Shabbat dinner will be seen as an anti-Semite and become a potential target. And they have lost funders, just as Charlie Kirk was losing funders toward the end of his life because he was no longer following orders. The Heritage Foundation is now being threatened with the loss of major funders. So Kevin Roberts, the guy who had to defend Tucker Carlson, who defended Tucker Carlson at this all-staff meeting that was not supposed to be revealed to the public, he walked back everything. He was apologizing. He was a complete hostage. He was seated there in the hot seat, being treated to ritual humiliation. And he said that someone named Yoram Hazony is flying into DC to basically show him the way, an Israeli American who is the sort of intellectual godfather of this national conservatism movement, which is like nationalism supposedly without the racism. And he's going to basically be his AIPAC handler now. So you can really see how impossible it is for the astroturfed, billionaire-backed conservative so-called movement, which is really just a wing of the Republican Party, to actually embrace the feelings of the conservative youth in the grassroots about Israel and to even allow a debate. And again, I want to make one more point. This all goes back to J.D. Vance. This is the thing to watch. This is all going to dog J.D. Vance as he runs for president in 2028. With Zionists and the Zionist movement, you're either completely with them or you're completely against them. And if you try to chart a middle path, they will see you as an enemy. And J.D. Vance now has to decide, is he with them or against them?
Before I let you go, here's an example of what the donor class in America has unleashed to help Israel's PR. Tell me if you think it works. Chris, cut number 3.
And I just want the anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West crowd to understand something. You're going to have to come through me and millions of people just like me. And you're not going to make it. You think your stupid little podcast is going to change the world like hell it is, not if I and everybody else have something to say about it. We cancel stuff all the damn time. Hitler admirers, Stalin admirers, Jew haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them.
How about little Ada Fuentes?
We cancel stuff all the damn time.
How about Tucker Carlson? What did he do for the country?
We cancel stuff all the damn time.
Interviews Putin. He interviews the lowest of scum, genocidal maniacs on the face of the earth. They need to be afraid of regular Americans like you and me. They need to be afraid of us.
They don't have a lifetime job like a bureaucrat who we're going to protect. And if they're your friend, there's something wrong with you. You don't get to wrap your psychotic, mental, unhinged, Nazi, Klan, jihadist bullshit around American patriotism. We're surrounded by cowards who have microphones, who have TV cameras, who have websites, who have columns. Cowards. To Tucker Carlson, I say, did you have a head injury? What happened to you? You platform these people, you deceive your audience, you lie to your audience, you become a full-blown, out-of-the-closet Jew hater.
Sorry to subject you to all of that.
Well, first it needs to be said that Tucker in some ways gave them what they wanted by hosting Nick Fuentes. It allows them to have these tirades about Tucker being an anti-Semite. And Tucker himself has never said or done anything that I think could be constituted as anti-Jewish. Nick Fuentes has, and he's pretty proud of it. And it's part of the source of his success. I mean, that needs to be said. But that's Mark Levin right there, who's a anti-Semitism generation machine. standing there in a gold tie, a shiny gold tie at Sheldon Adelson's casino in Las Vegas at a meeting of the Republican Jewish Coalition, declaring or insinuating that it doesn't matter how much popular support you build, whether you're Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens or whoever, through your media efforts, your alternative media show, you have to go through him and millions of Americans. And what he means is actually a small handful of billionaires that have the Republican Party and Donald Trump by the short and curlies. That's what it means. It means there's no democracy allowed on this issue of Israel. And he, Mark Levin, is the voice of Netanyahu and the Zionist billionaire class. That's a very undemocratic statement that will cause more hostility within the right towards Jewish people in general. And it's really unfortunate that most people, when they see organized Jewish activism, it's these freaks, this completely abhorrent class element of right-wing Likudniks or Jonathan Greenblatt from the Anti-Defamation League that they see. That's all they see. I mean, they're even like physically ghastly to look at. They're cartoonish villain figures. And what do they represent? What does the Republican Jewish Coalition actually represent? It represents at most 30% of Jewish Americans. Zoran Mamdani won a higher percentage of Jews in New York than that 30%, but 30% or less of Jews in America are Republican. And those that are Republican, they're pro-Netanyahu. They're much more religiously nationalistic. And they think they speak for all Jews and that there's no distinction between Jews and Israel. So they're a distinct minority within a minority group that is only 3% of the American public. That's a very dangerous thing to be doing in a majority Gentile country. What they've done is they have confused their own control for consent. And once they lose control, they're no longer, that Jews in general are no longer safe because they have identified all of us with their demented apartheid project of total control without the consent of the public. And they also are failing to realize why people are disgusted with them. It's because of their own actions and Israel's actions. It's not because of ancient hatreds. There's no...
Professor Mearsheimer has argued they will never engage in a public debate because they know they'll lose it. They just don't have any facts on their side. They won't debate you. They won't debate John Mearsheimer. They won't debate Jeff Sachs. They won't debate Scott Ritter. They won't debate Douglas McGregor. They just don't have any facts on their side.
No, I mean, that's one reason you don't see me on Piers Morgan a lot is whenever a producer calls me up and says, are you down for an Israel debate? I say, yeah. And then they can't get any of these people to go on with me.
Right.
Because they know they're going to get curb stomped. They can never win in the marketplace of ideas. And that's why they have to just basically buy up the entire marketplace, buy up TikTok, buy up CBS. They're about to buy CNN International. By them, I mean Israel's cutouts in the United States, because they don't want a debate to take place at all.
Before we conclude on a lighter note, the sandwich guy. You So Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney in D.C., was ordered by the president to present his case before a federal grand jury. She personally presented the case. The grand jury voted not to indict. Then she charged him with a misdemeanor, which, as you know, does not require an indictment by a grand jury. They had a 3-day trial this week. And this afternoon, notwithstanding what we just saw, the sandwich guy who was charged with striking a federal officer was found not guilty. Jeanine has got to be pulling her hair out.
Yeah, I mean, this was an iconic incident, and it was such a DC scene. I think this is around DuPont Circle like a guy in a yuppie who's drunk in a pink polo shirt. He's about to go, have his 3 a.m. 12-inch sub, and then he slams it in the chest of a heavily armored federal officer. No one in DC wanted the feds here. No one in DC needed them. There are over 30 agencies already operating in DC with the power to arrest. It's like how no one in Chicago wants what's increasingly an ICE invasion or an ICE crime wave. No one in Los Angeles, Northeast Los Angeles, wants ICE there, in which we saw this week ICE drive off with a man's toddler after arresting the man. They drove off with the toddler. We're seeing these scenes from around the country, but here was sort of a humorous, iconic scene of protest. And I could see the guy being prosecuted for like criminal mischief, a misdemeanor, but then he's brought before a federal judge for a misdemeanor. And we learned that, I just learned about this from you before the show, Judge, but the officer, I guess it was a Border Patrol officer, was getting gifts and putting them on his desk, pictures of the guy.
He was celebrating photos of what you just saw. Now, if this were an assault, if you were assaulted, would you celebrate it? And then he said the sandwich exploded. Well, the feds confiscated the sandwich, and it was in the courtroom, and it was in one piece. It never exploded.
Yeah, it was a narco-terrorist sandwich laced with explosives, explosive tuna. So yeah, Janine Pirro, another Trump DUI hire, is humiliated. This was one of her main cases, and she came out soon after with a press conference. And I think Pam Bondi as well.
Yes.
With a press conference warning, if you touch one of our officers, I will personally rip your skin apart with my press-on nails. Like they made such a big deal about it, and they've lost.
Well, they deserve the humiliation they are now getting, and I'm sure that Sandwich Guy will be lauded all over D.C. tonight and tomorrow. Perhaps in these very bars where it was trying to tell the ICE people to stay the hell out. Max, thank you very much. We really covered the gamut today, from the most profound and serious to the most absurd. All the best to you, my friend. Regards to Anya and your family, and we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to next week. Good seeing you.
Likewise. Thank you. Tomorrow, Friday, Professor Gilbert Doctorow at 3 in the afternoon, and at 4 in the afternoon, the Intelligence Community Roundtable. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.